What's going on, you guys? So, doing lever install this time. I actually got an anniversary present from my girlfriend, and she actually picked me up a couple of levers. And these are actually upgraded levers from what I currently am running. On the clutch and the brake, they both have an adjuster, and not just the brake, as well as a pivot point in case it were to fall. Then instead of the lever snapping, it would actually move out of the way so I won't be stuck somewhere. And I can run these either 2-finger, or I can actually extend these and I can go to 4-finger. So I've been wanting these for a little while, and it's really nice of her to actually get me these. So I'm going to show you guys how to do this very common install. So we're going to start on the clutch side. I recommend doing the clutch side first because this one is generally the one out of the two levers that may not fit. And I'll tell you now, if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. Don't try to make it fit because it won't work most of the time. So first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to screw this in so that way we can get this cable taken out. I can do this with my bike, but not everyone is able to. So we're going to line up this notch along the side, and then we should be able to tug this cable out and actually disconnect it from the lever. Now if you can't do that, then you may have to actually take the pin out right here that this pivots on, or you may have to take the mounting bracket off in order to get that cable out somehow. So now that we got the cable out, we're going to run down to this bottom bolt and we're going to remove this pin. So in order for me to get this pin out, there's a nut on the opposite side, but I can't get to it the way it is here, so I'm going to remove it. There's going to be these two Allen bolts right here. So when I try to use a socket for this, I'm actually having this that's hitting right here, so I'm not able to take it off. And if I use a wrench between this and this, I'm not going to have the clearance. So I'm actually going to have to remove this switch housing, which is going to have that Phillips and that Phillips. So let me move this out of the way a little bit. So I'm just going to take that one off. Alright, so this is the nut that I'm after, so I can get my lever free. And these holes are the two holes that I just took those Phillips screws out of. So now I'm going to take this off. Make sure you're holding it on the other side so it doesn't fall out. And then you should be able to just kind of push that through. There we go. Now that we have that pin out, the lever should kind of wiggle its way out. Now keep in mind right here, you're going to have this like bushing. The other lever doesn't have this. So that right there, you'll have to transfer into the new lever. So this is the pin that we removed, and this is that bushing. So they're going to be coated in the old grease, and they're not going to really, they're not going to lubricate super well. So we're actually going to clean this out. Sometimes you may see like little rust pits and stuff. So clean them up really well, and then re-oil them, and try to use a silicone-based grease if you can. They actually work better for this application. So this right here is the housing that the lever just came out of. You can see the tracks in there, and you want to make sure you clean that really well on both sides. Alright, so now we've got our cleaned housing, we've got our lever, and we're actually going to get our bushing. We're going to put our bushing in the lever, this hole right in there. That's perfect. And now we're going to get this inside the housing, just like that. Now we have our lightly lubricated pin, and that's going to go in, and you'll notice that it actually has a square underneath it. We'll make sure we get this all the way through. And notice it has a square underneath, so it won't sit flush. You might have to spin it around a few times and then it'll actually seat like it just did right now. So instead of it being kind of slightly up like this, it'll actually drop down. So if I brought it out of time, it sits like this, and if we spin it a little bit, it actually drops all the way down. Now we have the opposite side. We just grab the nut. So now I got that, got my nut. We're just going to screw that down. And we're not looking for this to be crazy tight. We just want it firm, just like that. And you still have play. You know, it's still able to articulate pretty easily. And that's really what we're looking for. We're not looking for anything super tight. But as you can see, it lines up very well and moves freely. So now we should be able to put our clutch switch back on. So we got my clutch switch. I actually disconnected the electrical connector so that way I didn't have to do it on the bike. So now we will have a locating kind of dowel right here, and that's going to go in this hole right here. So you might have to fight with it a little bit. You're going to push this in and let that locating dowel find its home. Just like that. We're going to hold it in place. And then we're going to throw our screws back in. And we might have to wiggle the housing around a little bit. You don't want this way too tight. Yet again, not everyone's gonna have to do this. This is just my particular bike. So don't expect to have to go this route. Yours might be easier. It's a little firm. And there we go. So now the lever's good. And as you can see through the button right there, it seems to be articulating that button pretty well. So now we just reconnect the electrical connector and we will mount this back up to the bike. Alright, so I'm going to reconnect this connector, which goes right there. I'm going to put it back up to the bike. Okay. Now we're going to get the cable. We're going to try and find its home underneath the lever in that hole. So now that you have it all back together, notice this big gap of slop. So we're going to back this out until we eliminate most of it. We just want like a 2 millimeter gap right there. So that should be almost perfect. I like mine a little bit tighter. Now I'm going to back this adjuster off. Extend my lever. I'm actually going to back this up a little bit. Slightly higher up. That seems pretty nice. Alright, so believe it or not, the brake lever is actually a lot easier. So you're gonna have a nut on the bottom, which fortunately this time I don't have to fight it so much. So we're gonna end up taking that off first. And that's gonna be for this pin. I've got to loosen it a little bit more. And once we get that nut off, then we're going to start to unscrew this. That's why it has that slit right there. So, nuts off. I'm going to back this out. So just give it a wiggle, comes right out. You don't have a bushing on this one, and normally you don't have the bushing. You don't have to worry about it for the brake side. Now you will have a pin that's sticking out here for the brake, and I don't know if you can see, but in here there's a little collar with like a hole in it. I'll show it to you on the other lever. It might be easier to see. This gold part right here actually has like a divot that rotates. Actually moves around, and you're supposed to have that lined up with the pin on the master cylinder that was sticking out a second ago. So make sure that that's lined up and make sure that pin goes inside there, otherwise your brakes won't work as well. So once it's fairly orientated, be mindful of the orientation of this and making sure that pin goes in there when you install it. Sorry for the light. The light kind of died on us pretty quick, but making sure you guys can still see everything. So now we made sure we thoroughly cleaned the inside of this. We want to make sure our gold piece is lined up right. All you got to do is just make sure it lines up correctly, which I'm going to double check now. It looks like it's not. I think we're good there. Now that you got it lined up, we will put that pin in. You might just have to wiggle it a bit. And once it bottoms out, you still have to screw this in. And then you're going to get your nut. We're going to take our nut. We're going to screw it on the bottom. Now we're going to tighten it. And keep in mind when you try to tighten this bottom one, this one might spin like that. So you're going to get your flathead and hold it. Then cinch it down. You don't have to go crazy tight. Now that that's in, I got good fluid movement, no bunching, no binding, nothing like that. It's not gritty. Set my adjustment roughly. This works. It seems pretty perfect. So lever install done.